Hi, welcome back to The Pursuit of Truth. It is the 20th of April 2018. So we're still talking about 9/11. So one of the main things that I've noticed on these events when it comes to 9/11, 7/7, I think Sandy Hook and maybe a few others, and obviously if you think of the two major terrorist events from a Western perspective, number one is 9/11, number two is 7/7 in London. Both those had active drills, practice runs of these kinds of events on that day. Now 7/7, theirs was almost exact, the same locations, whereas with 9/11 it wasn't the same location. But those drills, what are they for? Are they for, sometimes is it so that the people that need to be, like in case of 9/11, because of those drills, the aircraft that would have shot down these planes were elsewhere, and so it gave time for those planes to fly over all those sensitive targets. I mean, normally you would have expected jets to be scrambled like they are. Whenever you hear of, recently there have been like Russian jets that have become close to the UK border, and they scramble out jets to go and accompany them, make sure that they're not going to fly over space they're not meant to. So, the fact that no jets managed to get up for any of those planes, including the one that hit, or alleged one that hit the Pentagon being, well, what other building other than the White House should be more secure than the Pentagon? And yeah, a plane that was tracked, and these planes, a lot of them were tracked, and they were aware that there was something going on. I don't know if they're aware with all of them that they were all terrorist related, but they certainly were deviating from their course, which of course would be of great worry to anyone. And obviously after the first one, I'm sure they were looking at all the others. But of course with this, there's that famous speech when they were asked, should we stand down from the, should we shoot things down, and there was no real proper response given. So it is another red flag that why these active drills are taking place at the time. What is the purpose of them? It seems too coincidental. The fact that also that they then afterwards said that no one could have possibly imagined something like this ever happening. And well, there's three people who did, 3 Americans and 3 on television. So I'm not sure how they can claim that. And the 3 I know about is Bill Cooper, who talked about this event taking place and it would be a fake event, and I think he even mentioned Osama bin Laden. There's the Lone Gunman episode from the creator Chris Carter of X-Files. His sequel series, The Lone Gunman, actually has a plane that is flying into the Twin Towers, and I think at the end it gets diverted, so it never actually crashes into them. And that was aired, I think, a few months before 9/11. So to say that it couldn't be imagined. And then there's I've forgotten his name now, InfoWars guy. It's not called InfoWars anymore now, it's called I've forgotten his name, but he also before talked about this fake event, mentioned Osama bin Laden and that it would happen, and he sort of said before November. So yeah, there's 3 people that imagined it. And of course there's lots of documents now that we found where people were aware of this, that they were planning on taking over planes. So this fits into my theory of that the best way of doing these terrorist attacks is to let them take place and just to manage them. Obviously you've got Operation Northwoods as well. This is the American government in 1962, where they were, I think it was to do with Cuba, they were listing like ideas that they could get involvement, because you always need something to happen to we found that out with the war on terror, recently with Syria. You always have to have some kind of event that takes place to allow them morally to step in. And so they were listing all the different ideas, and one of those ideas was flying a plane, a fake plane, putting different tail numbers, pretending it's a commercial airline, putting out a message beforehand that it's been hijacked in the remote control, and blow it up. And this was in 1962. So for them to actually come up with an idea, you assume that these people would come up with ideas that actually could be done at that time. So I don't know if that's true, that they could actually remote control a plane at that time. So obviously that's 1962. By 2001, they must have had even better technology then. And we know with drones and stuff like that, that this stuff is all possible. And that would explain maybe the fact that the plane, one of the planes, I don't know if it's both of them, you can see underneath the fuselage, you can see a pod, a black pod. That shouldn't be on a commercial plane. Some people said that the plane doesn't fit the colours of a commercial plane that they said it was. There are reports that those planes didn't exist, that they couldn't be, that they weren't actually the ones, they were actually army planes that were used, and they can be remote controlled. That would explain the different shape of them and the grey colour. Obviously there's some people that say there were no planes at all, and that fits in with the eyewitness testimony that, they often, even NIST, pretend that they didn't hear about it, of people saying that they heard explosions rather than, they never saw a plane go into the building. Obviously that's possible, because if you're down on the ground you might not actually see that at that particular moment. It'd only be if you were actually looking at it. But you would have thought there would have been a lot of people that actually were looking up at that building at the time, just because of the other one had just been hit by a plane. So that it all seems very possible. And then looking at NIST, who conducted their investigation, and I believe it did actually take a long time for this investigation, if I remember rightly, to take place. Took over a year, I think, before the government actually decided, yeah, we're going to do an investigation. So by all that time, I'm sure all the evidence had disappeared completely. But NIST, when they show their model of the building, the model doesn't even, and it's supposed to be the most sophisticated ever, the model doesn't even fit the actual building falling down. It doesn't look like it. When you compare them together, which a lot of people have done on YouTube, you see it's completely different way. So all they did is modelled something to be able to give them, the end result, not taking into account actually what happened and how the building actually did fall down. Then there's the plane speeds, and that was what I think I was going to mention with the idea of the remote control. It might explain the plane speeds, because a lot of the plane speeds, there was on YouTube, I'm not sure which video it is, it's like one of these best 9/11 documentaries ever type videos, where they phoned up people who fly planes, and even the people who make them, and asked them about the speed. Could it do that kind of 400 or 500, whatever speed it was, at sea level? And they say no, it's impossible, bits would fall off, or it wouldn't be possible to do that. And you can clock the speed, and you can see that it is doing that speed. So how was that possible? That might go into the theory that there were no planes, which some people believe that there weren't even any planes that flew, and it was like explosions. Obviously there's, NIST say that they didn't look for explosive, and their reason for that is because if there was explosives, there would have been large explosions and people would have heard them. And they say they all the people they contacted, no one ever mentioned that. Despite if you're on YouTube, you can find like journalists, you can find firefighters. There's a famous one of the firefighter going boom, 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 boom. There's loads of them that are talking about explosions. And so it just looks like a cover-up. Just all of this that I'm rattling on about, and there's more, a lot more. I'm going to finish here, but there's a lot more. But it just seems there's just so much inconsistencies that whatever the story that they've told us, that we can conclude is almost certainly not true. Now, what really did happen, well, who knows? The investigation was hampered from the very beginning. That the steel and what was left of the building was taken to China. With any other investigation, they would have kept that stuff and they would have tried to rebuild it. They would have tested it. They certainly wouldn't have got rid of it that quickly. And I don't know how they managed to organise that. There does seem a lot of pre-planning in this. And obviously, if that is the case, that suggests that it isn't a terrorist organisation, that it is, in fact, a government. And obviously that fits with the war on terror, the fact that all the pilots that they alleged, the terrorists that they alleged, were Saudis, and yet they let Saudis out of the country and they ended up attacking Afghanistan and Iraq by trying to connect that Al-Qaeda was based there. Even though there was no link, and the fact is it was meant to be a war on terror, and yet, okay, so they got rid of Saddam Hussein, they got rid of Afghanistan's regime, but the war on terror, well, terror still exists, isn't it? Terrorism has actually got worse, if anything, especially in Europe, if you look at it now. So that didn't succeed, did it? Anyway, take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.